Good evening. I'm Renee Kemp in for Belva Davis, who's on assignment at the State Democratic Convention. Welcome to This Week in Northern California. Joining me for our news panel tonight are Tom Vakar, KTVU consumer editor, Scott Schaefer, host of the California Report on KQED Public Radio, and Aaron Glantz, reporter with the Bay Citizen. Aaron, let's start with you because you're going to be talking tonight about the huge foreclosure settlement that's been months and months in the making. So can you talk about the parameters of the settlement that finally came about?
Well, you've been hearing a lot in the news about this $25 billion national settlement. The tape that we played was of Barack Obama. But the good news for people in California is that we had our own side settlement. So California consumers are going to be able to get up to $18 billion. That's what Kamala Harris, our Attorney General, negotiated for us. But only certain kinds of people are going to be able to get this. You have to have a loan with Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Citibank, JP Morgan Chase, or Allied Financial. They have to actually own your loan and have not sold it to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or somebody else. And if you already lost your home to foreclosure, all you're going to get is about $2,000.
Well, about 60% of the loans in California are Fannie or Freddie backed, are they not?
Yeah, about 60% of them are Fannie or Freddie backed. I talked to Wells Fargo. They said that only about 20% of their loans are covered by the settlement.
Aaron, I remember when this the foreclosure crisis began, there was a lot of discussion about what to do, and there were people who felt like, well, people who could never have afforded this in the first place, who shouldn't have had a mortgage, who were using it as kind of a ATM and drawing money out and getting deeper into debt, that they shouldn't get any benefit from any kind of bailout or any kind of help. So in this case, are those folks going to be helped by this, or what's the criteria? Who's going to decide whether or not you're eligible?
Well, you have to be underwater on your mortgage, and you have to have your loan from one of these 5 banks. And then theoretically, you should have access to this pot of money. So $12 billion is for reworks on loans here in the state of California. It should help hundreds of thousands of people. And then there's hundreds of thousands more who are just going to get checks of about $2,000 because they were fraudulently foreclosed on. And the CEO of Bank of America called this rough justice because it's hard for them to retroactively go back and figure out who was rightly and wrongly foreclosed on. So if you got foreclosed on during a 3-year period, you can get $2,000.
Attorney General Harris, she said that there are about 450,000 people are actually going to benefit from this. But I get the sense, and I wonder if you get the sense, that what this really does is this turns up the heat on everybody, including Fannie and Freddie, to do something, because these 5 banks, extraordinarily powerful banks, extraordinarily influential. To a certain extent, they have knuckled under to this pressure. Can we look for other large banks and maybe Freddie and Fannie to eventually make similar settlements?
Well, she's also suing Fannie and Freddie. She sued them about a month ago because they were refusing to even answer investigatory questions from the state of California. Also, she has demanded that the head of Fannie Mae resign. The entire Bay Area delegation and many representatives from Southern California are demanding that he resign. And the question is, why is Obama keeping him when there's so much pressure coming from his own party and the Republican Party also critical of Fannie and Freddie? So it's somewhat confusing.
What is going to be done? I mean, now there's this big pot of money, and just whenever there's a big pot of money, there's also predators and scam artists who are going to come in and potentially and try to get some of that money. How are they going to stop that from happening?
Well, I mean, first of all, you don't need to pay any money to get this money. So if anybody comes to you and says, give me $500, I'll help you access this, you can just hang up the phone.
If you know.
If you know, right. There are HUD-certified housing counselors all around the state of California, the country, and community centers and at, large organizations. But there are going to be scam artists, and there will be law enforcement chasing the scam artists. And a lot of it is about how much messaging the government can do to people around this, so that people are actually aware of what the system is. One of the provisions of this settlement is that if you are part of this group of people who is eligible, the banks are supposed to end this practice called dual tract, which is I'm talking to Tom about my rework at the same time Scott is foreclosing on me. They're supposed to only have one point of contact in the discussion. We'll have to see how that works out, because that's something the banks have really resisted.
And so much of this money is really set aside, or if you want to call it money, it may be nothing more than a stroke of a pen to write down principle that if somebody owes $450,000 on the house, that perhaps they'll only owe $350,000 or $300,000. So it's a question of whether there'll be a real exchange of money or whether or not these people just simply say, we write this off, we'll take the tax benefit, whatever that is, we'll have to declare whatever that loss is, and we'll just move forward from
I mean, 12 billion of the 18 billion is write-offs. So 12 billion is not actually a check changing hands.
It's surprising, too, that they decided that they would work with clients whether they were current with their payments or not.
Well, that is a big change because, one of the problems that we've seen so far is the early programs that the Obama administration adopted, you have to go into default first. First, you have to get behind, and then you end up negotiating with your banks for months, and you get farther and farther behind. So if you can't do the rework, then you lose your home to foreclosure. And so, hopefully this will work out differently.
Okay. Well, we're going to move along a bit. Everybody was saying that the economy was going to be the major subject of the presidential election, but it looks like there are going to be some social issues that are going to be popping up, too. And I wouldn't be surprised if Prop 8 wasn't one of them. And Scott Schaefer, talk about the scope of the decision that was made this week.
Right. Well, going back to why this was before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, Renee, there was a decision in 2010 by Judge Vaughn Walker, a very sweeping, wide decision that really broke open the door for gay marriage and said that there was a fundamental right that everyone had to marriage, regardless of your gender. So that went up on appeal, and then this week a three-judge panel narrowed the ruling. They said that they agreed that the judge was right in striking that down, Prop 8, but it was a much more narrow ruling tailored to the facts in California. Whereas Vaughn Walker's opinion, if it had been upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court, it could have struck down gay marriage bans across the country. This one, if it's upheld, really only applies here. So what the decision they came up with said, look, California had gay marriage. They had a broad array of rights from domestic partners and adoption and preventing discrimination. So when they withdrew the word marriage, essentially, from gay and lesbian couples, what was that? There was no rational reason for that other than animosity, prejudice toward this group, and the only effect it had was to diminish their status, and they found that to be unconstitutional. So that's a much narrower decision.
In that it was specific to the language in the California proposition, and therefore it does not apply necessarily to any other state.
Right. Well, it could apply theoretically to other states in the Ninth Circuit where, they had gay marriage and then a ballot measure took it away. But the decision was really rested on a previous Supreme Court decision in 1996, the Romer v. Evans. It had to do with a ballot measure in Colorado that was passed and then struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court. It basically prevented any kind of special benefits or legal protections for gays and lesbians. And Anthony Kennedy, the critical swing justice on the U.S. Supreme Court, wrote that decision striking down the Amendment 2 in Colorado. So I think they're hoping, the opponents of Prop 8 are hoping that he would be on their side in this as well.
In an odd sort of way, though, as California continues this fight and continues, in states all around us and states all over the country, we're seeing more and more moves to the legitimization of gay marriage. I mean, is this almost a day late and a dollar short in one sense?
Well, I think people here they look at Iowa and now Washington State this week passed gay marriage. The governor says she's going to sign it. So it clearly things are moving along, and that's an interesting point because it may not be on the side of supporters of Prop 8. The longer this drags out before it goes to the U.S. Supreme Court, you've got now New York State has it, New Jersey's thinking about it, Illinois is thinking about it. And so the courts tend not to like to get too far out in front. So if by the time this gets to the U.S. Supreme Court, you've got 20% of the United States living in a state where they have gay marriage or something very much like it, you might see the court more willing to strike down Prop 8.
This three-judge panel, I mean, two of the judges are quite liberal. Why would they craft such a narrow ruling?
Interesting question. The two judges who struck it down were both appointed by Democrats. Stephen Reinhardt, who's probably the most liberal federal judge in the country. And I think the reason they narrowed it down is that very much with an eye toward the Supreme Court. I think in one sense, they wrote it so narrowly that there's a chance now that the Supreme Court won't even take this up on appeal because they may feel, well, this only affects California. It's not really, usually when the Supreme Court takes a case, it's because there's a disagreement in different circuits throughout the country, like with health care. That's not the case here. So you could see that maybe the conservatives on the court might be a little worried about Anthony Kennedy and where he would rule on this, and so they may not vote to take it up, and the liberals, might just be happy not to have to rule on it quite so soon. So there is that chance. And then if it does go to the Supreme Court, the fact that it's narrower and the fact that it's based on Anthony Kennedy's ruling in Romer, and also he also wrote the decision striking down sodomy in 2003. So I think they feel like if we target the argument right at him, that'll help win his vote if it does get to the U.S. Supreme Court.
The actions by officials, Obama refusing to defend the Defense of Marriage Act, Kamala Harris, Jerry Brown refusing to defend Prop 8. How much do you think that is playing into this legal fight?
Well, it's interesting. The Defense of Marriage Act, there are several cases in the federal courts now, including two here in California. One of those, the one in Massachusetts, may actually get to the U.S. Supreme Court before Proposition 8 does. It's going to be probably at least the 2013 session before Prop 8 gets there. So it's quite possible that DOMA will be struck down before it gets. DOMA requires states to recognize marriages that are performed in other states, even if it's not legal in your state. So it's going to be interesting. I think clearly things are moving. You look at the polls now, there's a slight plurality supporting gay marriage. That was not the case 3-5 years ago, certainly not when Prop 8 passed. So yeah, things are moving, and it's all, it is part of the political gestalt is changing a little bit, definitely.
And the bottom line is, when can marriages start again, if at all?
Well, that's an interesting question. It looks like the stay on the ruling will end on February 28th, which would mean theoretically they could begin on February 28th, but you can be sure that the backers of Prop 8 will go back into court, to the Supreme Court if necessary, to get that stay put back in place so that there won't be any more same-sex marriages until this is finally resolved.
And the lone dissenting judge was a Bush appointee, right?
He was. Randy Smith. George W. Bush appointed him in 2007, a Mormon from Pocatello, Idaho. And his dissent was also fairly narrow. He basically said, I'm not so sure there wasn't a rational reason for enacting Prop 8, that it didn't have to be based on prejudice. And he used the phrase optimal parenting, that the state does have an interest, or the voters had an interest in wanting to have households where there was one father and one mother, and that was that's a reasonable thing to want, and you don't have to be anti-gay to necessarily support that. So that was the basis of his decision, and we'll see whether the Supreme Court picks up on that if and when it takes this case up.
Okay, great. And the Ninth Circuit will be busy. They have oral arguments in 209 starting Monday, right?
Monday they do. The anti-discrimination ban in California is going to be taken up, and Governor Brown, interestingly enough, is on the side of the plaintiffs. So we'll see what happens.
Interesting development on that. Well, we're going to turn now to Tom Vakar. I'm sure everybody's seen the big signs about the closure of the Bay Bridge. Can you just talk a bit, Tom, about what we can expect with that closure?
Let's go to the video.
Let's go to the
Let's
video.
do that. What we're going to look at here is a Caltrans generated piece of tape. And basically what you have to understand is that the westbound lanes, and what I mean by that is the lanes that are going into the city, are going to be closed. The other eastbound lanes going to Oakland will be just fine. And what's happening here is, if you look at what you're seeing there at the toll plaza, you're going to see that the traffic is going to be moved off to the left. And what that means is the lanes have already been built. They're simply going to do some shifting of these lanes during this closure, which happens over the weekend until next Tuesday. And then what will happen is that will clear the way for the new what is called the Oakland touchdown of the bridge to actually be built. And the idea is to move the traffic over so you can put this thing down, so when they're actually ready to open this up, you can open up both lanes, because these will be parallel lanes, some going east, some going west. They'll be parallel, but the idea is to just clear it out so that in effect it'll get done about 6 months to a year earlier. And although nobody will say this out loud, in time for the America's Cup, so they can show this magnificent bridge off to the world for the duration of the America's Cup. That's really what's going to happen. As we continue to move forward, we're going to also see the stringing of the actual cables. There are going to be 17,000 strands that will make up one cable 2.5 feet wide, which will be one continuous cable that will put that bridge into place. And then by the Labor Day of 2013, not too far from now, we'll actually have this bridge go into operation 24 years after the first earthquake, the Loma Prieta quake, felled part of the bridge and made it a priority to replace it.
Whoever thought that it would take so long? 24 years, and how much is the cost now? Starting at about $1 billion, right?
Started about $1 billion. It is now $6.3 billion, and part of this has to do with the fact that this is a one-off bridge. It had to be built on unique territory, deep into a bay. It had to be done in the right way. It also had to be built to a standard, which is this, that if there is a major earthquake, the largest credible earthquake, either on the San Andreas or the Hayward Faults, which are capable of very large earthquakes, the bridge not only needs to survive that, it needs to be in service immediately thereafter for emergency crews and shortly thereafter for the public. So it is built to the highest standard that there can be. However, going through all of that were the politics of it, where you had the mayors Brown arguing over what should be done, and then the Governor Schwarzenegger saying, well, we just want to do a causeway, and ultimately we ended up on this large self-anchored suspension tower that's out there. So it is going to be a monument that will last about 150 years to the year 2163. So the $6 billion, if you amortize it out over that period of time, it's probably a pretty good bargain, but we're going to pay for it a lot quicker than that.
Talk about the politics of this, because as you said, I when I saw this deadline, I went to the America's Cup website, and in fact the finals are going to be the week, I think it's September 7th of 2013. So how does that work? I mean, who pushed the levers and got that done so that it would work in time for that?
Well, part of it is what Caltrans learned in a lot of these emergency repairs on Devil's Slide, and when the bridge went out up in Geyserville, and when the part of the maze burned down, they learned how to do things much more quickly. So they started saying, okay, without getting crazy about money, what can we do here that would be different, that's never been tried before, that would speed this up? And they came up with this thing. They said, well, here's an opportunity. There's a window of opportunity here where we can show this bridge off. Safety was never compromised in any of that. I don't think anybody decided that. But they figured out a way to do it. And because they figured out a way to do it, it will be done 6 months to a year early. But clearly, the idea of showing off this bridge to a worldwide audience is something that they're thinking about.
And do you think that it will actually be done then? Because those of us who've been waiting 23 years may have some skepticism?
Well, I'll tell you, I think the question is, what happens in the interim if there's a major earthquake? What would we do about that? Would we have to speed up that new bridge in order to not have to rebuild the old one, or to repair the old one? Or are we likely to run into some more politics? I think we won't run into any more politics, because I frankly think the public will not bear any more expense on this bridge for this project.
Since you're sort of our resident road warrior, can you talk a bit about the Doyle Drive project as well, since that is literally smack dab in the middle and seems to have run out of funds?
Yeah, $1.1 billion. The reason that the bridge goes on is that it's supported by bridge tolls. There's a stream of money there. It's been committed. The people that lend the money know that it's going to be there. They're going to get paid. Doyle Drive is a different thing. It was a phased project, as all projects are, but they basically have gotten to the end of the first phase, and now there's some money that was supposed to come from the state is not forthcoming anytime soon, and some money that was supposed to come from the feds that they wanted to divert from other projects, they couldn't get that done. So if they don't get this thing figured out in the next few weeks, come June, this thing is going to come to a halt about halfway done. Now, what's important about that, obviously, is that we're talking about a very dangerous situation. It's a 75-year-old bridge, and it's one that needs to be replaced.
Okay, thank you, Tom. In fact, thank you all for joining us today. Alan Glantz, Tom Vakar, thank you so much, Scott Schaefer, for being here.